Hello and welcome to the AS Micro feature tour. In this short movie, we will run through some of the key features of the system, and we will show how AS Micro contributes to the field of archaeological data representation and visualization. For this movie, a 3rd millennium BCE early dynastic building from the site of Abu Salabik, which is located in the modern state of Iraq, will be used as our test dataset. Abu Salabik was a medium-sized city in the 3rd millennium, and it is notable in archaeological terms as it is one of the best excavated Mesopotamian sites of recent times, using techniques such as surface scraping and micromorphology to better understand the development of its domestic space at this very early stage of the urban experiment. The site was excavated most recently during the 1970s and 1980s, with Nicholas Postgate as director. First, let us say a few brief words about the philosophy and goals that underlie the AS Micro system. AS Micro has emerged out of the ArcSeer system, and while ArcSeer tends to view archaeological sites in the context of their surrounding landscapes, AS Micro changes this focus to the smaller scale. So, for example, while ArcSeer might present a visualization of an entire Mesopotamian village, AS Micro would select a single building or sector out of that village and use this as its central scene. AS Micro is concerned with the archaeological method, and as such it is primarily interested in presenting representations of trenches and their enclosed stratigraphy. It does this in what we hope are new, exciting, and interesting ways that will provoke new interpretation. Around this central concept are some of the features and ideals that users of ArcSeer will be very familiar with. AS Micro is available via the web and so is easy to access. It encourages user interaction at every stage, and so users of the system can add comments and generally engage with the data. AS Micro avoids the abstraction that has become all too familiar to modern consumers of academic and popular culture. In the place of data arranged in columns and rows, data is now represented in a way that much more closely reflects its real-world context. This does not mean to say that AS Micro represents objective reality, but it does at the very least attempt to break down the levels of abstraction that are now common in modern representational techniques. AS Micro draws in data from multiple sources, and so it is easy to switch between the interrogation of spatial and textual data. Okay, now that we have a bit of an idea about what AS Micro is all about, let's get in and start using the system, and I will explain the various features and the background ideas as they are encountered. When you first run an AS Micro project, you are presented with a help window, as shown here. This runs through the basics of the system and it explains how one can go about using it. This is a handy feature that can be recalled at any stage by simply hitting the H key on your keyboard. Central to AS Micro is the scene mode, and this is the first mode that you encounter when you get beyond the initial help window. The scene mode shows a 3D representation of the entire target scene, which in this case is a house from Abu Salabik. The user can move in and around the scene using the left, right, up and down arrows on your keyboard, and you can even rotate the scene object by left-clicking the mouse and dragging. You'll notice that in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen is a panel that displays information about the scene. I can scroll down and look through the data quite easily here. Another panel that is displayed in the scene mode is the user panel, which is located in the top left-hand corner of the screen. This tells me that at the moment I'm logged in as anonymous, which is the default user. If I want to be able to edit data, for example by attaching a note to some data object, then I would need to log in using a username and password that has the privileges that allow editing. The scene mode allows the user to locate the trench that he is interested in a simple and naturalistic way. You'll notice that there are a number of yellow objects scattered across the surface of the house. These represent trenches that have been dug in order to understand the stratigraphy of the house. If I move the cursor over one of these boxes, you'll notice that it changes red. This means that it contains further information. To access this information, I simply left-click with my mouse on it. We now enter what is known as the sondage mode. The scene is removed and we are presented with a representation of the trench in isolation. Imagine this object as a cube of earth that has been lifted clean out of the ground. Again, we are able to move in and out of the object and we can click and drag the object to rotate it. We also have a new addition to the panels. This panel is called the context selector. This panel lists all the contexts that are associated with this particular trench. Currently, context 11621 is selected. This, I can tell you, is the uppermost context that was excavated in this trench. You can see that the surface of the context is identified in our trench model as a red layer. If I click on the next context down, context 11621 disappears, and we are left with all the context found below it. I can continue to do this and watch as the layers disappear. Think of this as a series of instant single context excavations. I can select any of these 19 contexts that were discovered during the trench's excavation. In this case, I am brought back to the point during the excavation when context 11641, a wall, was still there. It is important to remember that archaeology is a destructive process. All of these contexts now no longer exist, but by using AS Micro, the archaeologist is able to relive the excavation process after the event. This is potentially a very powerful tool when one considers the difficulties involved in creating an interpretation of the stratigraphy of a site months or even years after its excavation. Why rely on memory and 2D drawings when you can use AS Micro to relive the experience? AS Micro also provides quick and easy access to the data associated with these contexts. Here we can click on a context. Let's take the top one. And immediately we are presented with a full range of information related to this context. All this information is stored in an online database, and users with sufficient access rights can edit it. Such users can also add notes, as we see down here. And this encourages a sort of forum type exchange focused around the context. So to summarize then, if you are interested in a particular trench or context when using AS Micro, you go to its spatial representation first and then you query it, just like in the real world. That completes our short introduction to the features and philosophies of the AS Micro system. Please visit our website at arcseer.com for future updates and further information. Thank you.